So we're gonna do a little live Q&A tonight. So I know we have a bunch of questions that have already been submitted. So that's awesome. And we will cover those. And if any of our live audience has questions, just send them along and we will do our absolute best to cover whatever anyone has.
That is awesome. I think one of my favorite things about working with you, Bart, is we get the coolest questions from our health-focused crowd. Always serves to learn from the answers.
Yeah, I love, especially when some of the questions are specific, like detailed questions. They can tell they're paying attention. They're personally focused on leveling up their health. So any and all, best we can, we'll answer them. If I can't come up with an answer, maybe I'll just make one up. Yeah.
Sounds good, Bart. Well, we are all set. Are you ready for your first question?
Yes, let's do it. Bring it on.
Dive in. Beautiful. All right. So I have both Kava and Ashwagandha Forte in my medicine cabinet. Awesome. Which is the best time to use each one?
Okay, so those who are not familiar, they're both herbs. One's called Kava and one is called Ashwagandha. This is a great question because they're both calming herbs. And then there are definitely some differences, especially therapeutically. So I'll dive into those a little bit. So Kava, fantastic in terms of helping relax the body. It's best known for helping people with anxiety. And that's probably how I use it the most in clinic. And I use a lot of it very often I use it for sleep as well to help people fall asleep. So if you're an anxious person and you need to fall asleep easier at night, Kava is your herb. The beauty of Kava kicks in about 15 minutes. It'll last somewhere around 2 hours and then it just kind of weans off. There's no hangover from it. Fantastic. Very, very safe herb. These herbs very specifically come out of these three little Pacific islands way out in the Pacific Ocean. So very safe, very effective. Ashwagandha is an herb that most people have at least heard of a little bit. Very calming and has a little different impact and a little different effect in how they calm. So the way that ashwagandha is going to affect the body, it has a direct impact on the hypothalamus pituitary axis. And then it has a little lean into what we call the HPA, which is hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And it has great impact on thyroid function. So the way that the two herbs work are actually quite different. Ashwagandha used more on a therapeutic schedule, meaning that I'll have someone take this daily, maybe a couple times a day. Sometimes if they, have been under tremendous amount of stress over periods of time, this is great for them. If they find that they're out of balance when it comes to their emotions, they're getting too anxious over time, maybe not clinically like full-blown panic attacks, but this is fantastic to use daily to just help our hormonal system, especially the hypothalamus gland. So think ashwagandha, fantastic for the HP regulation. That's going to be the biggest one, the most impact on overall balancing of hormones. Kava works on your nervous system, on your central nervous system, specifically reducing sympathetic responses. So that when we're wired all day long, we're built up, we got muscle tension in our body, Kava is fantastic for that. It's not uncommon that I'll use Kava just if I have a lot of tight muscles on my neck or my shoulders, that I'll use it just as a result, just as to get the impact of muscle relaxation. So Kava, most often I'm using it in the acute phase. You think that you're having a panic attack, there's nothing better than using something this to aid your body in relaxation. And it calms the system down. Ashwagandha will be very good in those scenarios, but not as fast acting as Kava would be. So clinically, for person who's asking this question, this is a good one for everyone. They're both tools that we want to have. If you experience, especially things like anxiety, or you might even get to the point where you have a little bit of a panic attack, or everything's kind of building up on you, they're both fantastic to have in your toolkit. Ashwagandha can be used daily and usually to get you through that event. Maybe there's a push at work for 3 months. Maybe you're an accountant and it's tax season. Using ashwagandha, it won't interfere with your function, your mental clarity, your physical attributes. And again, the beauty of ashwagandha, when we're having stress, the two first hormone regulators that we're going to see being impacted is the thyroid gland and your adrenal system. It's adrenal glands, and ashwagandha is phenomenal for both. Kava, again, if you do get really wound up, that's one that you want to use. Fantastic, fast acting. You just have to kind of find the dosing that works for you. And if you don't need it, you don't take it. So it's one of the ones you kind of keep on your shelf.
Beautiful. We have a clarifying question from Eric on Zoom. So when we talk about ashwagandha, Bart, is there specific between ashwagandha complex and ashwagandha forte in relation to what you shared?
Yes, what Eric is asking about, often one of the companies that I use is Standard Process, and kind of their sister company is a herbal company called MediHerb. And MediHerb is where I would get both kava and ashwagandha, or a complex of herbs that come together called ashwagandha complex, which I believe has a little bit of licorice root in it and maybe even a little romania. So the ashwagandha in both, fantastic. If you take the ashwagandha, so I will use the ashwagandha complex, not to get too confusing here, when I know that at the root of it, there's a dysfunction with the adrenal system. When I know that they're out of balance, they're either hyper producing cortisol or under producing, I'll use the ashwagandha complex. If I'm trying to help someone and it's not really an adrenal issue, there's not the whole fatigue component taking place. This is just, I'm just wired up stress. I can't seem to unwind. My stress is going to stick with you on a day-to-day basis. It's starting to affect your emotions. That's where ashwagandha plays a huge role. Ladies, for example, all of a sudden your cycle is different because you've been under duress for a couple of weeks at a time or a couple of months at a time. Ashwagandha could literally be your best friend. Ashwagandha forte is the other one. So there's ashwagandha complex and ashwagandha forte. And the ashwagandha forte is going to be a stronger dose.
Beautiful, a little more direct. Awesome, Bart. Well, there are two great products that I know you and I have used lots.
Yeah, and interesting enough, so we even use it with, we use ashwagandha a lot with our dogs. Heck, we use kava. So for dogs that may have anxiety with separation anxiety, or we have one that has a really hard time when we have storms or thunder, and it's affecting the central nervous system, winds up and he stays in that fight or flight, we give him both.
Awesome. And do you see that he calms?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So so here's what's great. That's a good question. And probably one of the most important things I can tell you is that once you have these in your toolkit, learning how to use them becomes the key. That's the art of practicing health. So with our dog, when we see the radar, we know that stress is on its way. We support our dog prior to the event. And I'm going to encourage everyone that's listening to that needs to be our health practice. We know what life has for the most part. We know what to expect tomorrow. And if we know that tomorrow is going to be very similar to today, which for most of it's going to, and it was stressful today, probably going to be stressful tomorrow. So let's not wait until the whole system breaks down. Let's not wait until we need that acute phase. Help me, not go to the ER today because I'm having a panic attack. So that's where ashwagandha can be a daily great friend of ours to just help hormone regulation.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for whomever submitted that beautiful question. Are you ready for question number 2, Bart?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So if you are in the Panhandle, if you are in the South, this will resonate. What can I do about seasonal allergies?
Yeah, 'tis the season. In fact, yesterday I was just washing my truck and it had this glow of yellow gold on it. So, all right. So this is an interesting topic, and I call it interesting because I think we've been told about half of the truth when it comes to seasonal allergies, and I'm going to clarify that. And what I mean by half of the truth is that half of the truth is that during the certain seasons, so we'll call them seasonal allergies right now. I think it's spring seasons, spring season. So, but we'll call it pollen season. And then depending upon where you live, there might be ragweed. And there's all these different moments where we have an excessive amount of pollen and budding and things, like kind of floating around in the air. And you look and it's outside or your pool, there's all this yellow stuff on it. So the first part of that, I say it's interesting. And I think we've been told half the truth is that, yes, there's pollen everywhere, but that's not the end of it. The other part is that your diet will play a huge role in how you respond to the pollen. And I think that's fair for me now to kind of explain that part of it. So this is the way that it works. So, and your liver is going to play a big role here. So the way our immune system works, especially the liver specifically, its job is to take in these harmful toxins or potentially harmful substances and break them down and to make them non-toxic or non-harmful and get them out of your body. That's the job of the liver. That's what it's doing. Everything that's coming into the body, including the pollen, including the toxins, gluten, all the alcohol and stuff, it's going to end up at one point or another, it's going to pass by the liver. And if the liver is in good shape and is capable of doing its job, it will break down those toxins and it'll get them out of your body. In the event that your liver is preoccupied, and that's the best way to say it, if it's preoccupied with dealing with other stuff, it's dealing with alcohol, it's dealing with this, it's dealing with that. When those toxins come in the body, those foreign substances, AKA pollen, come to your body, it's not gonna be able to break them down and get rid of them. So it is in this moment that your body then says, man, the immune system has to take over here. What are we gonna do? And it releases pollen. I'm sorry, it releases histamine. And histamine is the part that we don't like. That's the part that gives us the itchy eyes, watery eyes, stuffy sinuses. This will affect people's skin, affect their GI system because it's pro-inflammatory. Very uncomfortable too. So I'll see a lot of people in clinic right now that have headaches. And yes, there'll be misalignments associated with them. A lot of them are because they're bringing in all this stuff. So anyways, the truth that I think people have is that, I guess it's caused by pollen. The truth that I don't think they've been told yet is that your diet plays a huge role. So when it comes to diet, it's simple. We've talked about this 1,000 times. There's 3 things I would tell you to eliminate and test me, try to challenge me on this. If you're right in the smack dab middle of dealing with seasonal allergies, 3 things. Get rid of alcohol for 1 week, get rid of gluten for 1 week, and get rid of dairy for 1 week, and you will feel better. It's really that simple. The people that have less sugar and carbohydrates in their diet have less seasonal allergies.
I know for people who are in the throes of seasonal allergies, that is an amazing opportunity to seek some relief, just to experiment for 1 week, see what happens.
Yeah, and I should add to that too. If you're the individual who every year seems like you have seasonal allergies, at the root of that, remember, that is really immune deficiency. Because sometimes we have to step back and go, hey, listen, we both walk outside and there's pollen everywhere. Why does one person have an allergic response and the other person doesn't? And it's because the host is ill prepared in one scenario and is very prepared in the other, meaning the host, meaning our body, our immune system from the inside out. All right, now with that being said, so that's an important part because I have remedies. There are some things that I give to people every single day, and I don't give them unless I at least to some degree give that disclaimer. Listen, clean your diet up. That'll have the greatest impact. I should throw in there too, super hydrate. Well, let's just flush the system out. It's one of the easiest ways. If it's coming in, flush it out. If it's coming in, flush it out. If more is coming in, flush more of it out with more water. That's a simple, easy habit to begin. So there are a couple of things that I use in terms of like supplements and herbs. Hands down, the single most effective one is one that we talked about just a week or 2 ago in our home medicine cabinet, which is called Antranex. So when we were talking about that show, I said, this is the one. If you wanted one that was going to act as if it's an antihistamine, it's a different mechanism, but it'll act as if it's an antihistamine. There's a product called Antranex. And so, which means that if you're waking up and you're stuffy, your head's stuffy, you got, your throat's a little itchy or scratchy, whatever it may be, Antranex is wonderful. It's a beef liver extract, which helps your liver drain, which means your liver will have more capacity to handle the bad guys. And the bad guys could be pollen, bad guys could be alcohol for that matter. So Antranex will help your body handle more. So, because there is truth. The truth is that there's a lot of pollen out there. So we want to be able and be capable of handling more, increasing our capacity. So that's number one. That's hands down the way to do it. And usually I recommend, and again, none of which I say here today substitutes for good doctor's advice, or you go visiting your doctor or any medical advice. This is only about a conversation about us, how we help people level up. So don't take it as doctor's advice. The way that I'll typically make a recommendation for people to improve their function of the liver is by using 4 or 5 of those Antranex at one time. So take 4 or 5 of them. Best is when you do it right before bed and right when you wake up. because those are the times that your body, when we do it right before we go to bed, we're going to help the liver drain through the course of the night. And then when we get up, your body wants to detox. That's why we use the restroom. That's so often we can blow our nose. You want to support that system of getting things out of the body. So really good, really effective. There are a couple other things that I use. Cod liver oil, old school cod liver oil. Those essential fatty acids, the best way we think of essential fatty acids or fish oils, omega-3s, is that they help facilitate the inflammatory process. So making sure we have copious amounts of those, which is still one of my favorite ways to do it. So Antranex, cod liver oil, good. And then another one, especially if you're chronically, year in and year out, you deal with these seasonal allergies. And this is a little known one, and you don't have to take much of this. It's an herb called black cumin seed. It's fantastic. The way that it works, again, is the mechanism is through the liver. So it supports the liver to essentially drain and respond better. So we're not going to have that full histamine response every year. So if you're looking for a couple, my first choice always is Antranex, because that gives us the most relief right away. Cod liver oil, same thing. It can give you some pretty good relief. The black cumin seed, a little bit more of a longer haul, but very, very effective. And especially if you're having seasonal allergies, you have an immune deficiency.
So with that in mind, Bart, we had a follow-up question from Carla on Zoom asking if Conjuplex and Andrographis would also be applicable for allergies.
So Carla just asked about two herbs that we did talk about in our home medicine cabinet as well. Did we not?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We definitely did.
So these work in a little bit of a different capacity. So when we're talking about these allergic responses to pollen, we're talking about this acute situation. And Andrographis, the herb Andrographis complex, which has Andrographis, holy basil, and echinacea, are absolutely fast-acting, no doubt, especially holy basil, fast-acting immune responders. Absolutely will help. Its biggest benefit there is going to inhibit that allergy turning into an infection. What a lot of people end up with, because they're drowning it in sugar, they're drowning it in carbohydrates and gluten, and then they start taking decongestants, and they never actually get to the root cause of it. So they end up getting, because it prolongs it. All the time we interfere, it always prolongs it. And when that happens, that's when we become more susceptible to infection. So things like Andrographis complex with the different herbs, and Conjuplex, which uses things like calcium, ribonucleic acid, a little bit of a thymus gland in there, which is fantastic for feeding your white blood cells. Are those my first line for allergies? No, yet. If you're that individual that is prone to, when your seasonal allergies turn into infections, sinus infections, ear infections every year, 100%, that is your go-to.
That's an awesome point of clarification. I have another question that came in from Jesse tonight, and it's kind of seasonal as well. Why do bug bites itch so much? And is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, so interesting enough, so this is going to be different for everybody. And bug bites, when they bite us, they get a little bit of poison in there. That's essentially what they're doing. They're just, and it's so insane that little bug, you can imagine, like, how much is it really putting in there? Minute amount. But it's sometimes it's a neurotoxin, but inevitably it is creating a response from our body that's an immune response instantly. That itchy, so that the histamine, here's what's fascinating about histamine. There's histamine all over the body, ready and available to do exactly that. When something bites it, whatever histamine, what they're called mast cells, whatever's close by, boom, it gets released, and you'll have an inflammatory response. That initial phase of inflammation is actually very important. That is where your body, although histamine ultimately will tire the body out and become toxic after its initial use, it's also important. It's what your immune system is using in that moment to defend you. It would prefer that your liver was clean, et cetera. This is what I've also found over all these years. The cleaner we get, and the more enhanced we get our immune system, the more capacity we have as strong human beings, increasing mitochondrial function, down-regulating blood sugars, making sure we don't have insulin resistance, making sure that we have good sleep patterns. all of these play a role, even to the simplest things as mosquito bites and bug bites. Stronger humans just do a little bit better in all scenarios.
Awesome, Bart. Well, we haven't stumped you yet, so shall we continue? Are you ready for the next one?
Yeah, but I'm one thing I would add to that. The
Beautiful.
other small thing, not small at all. Remember, the cool thing is we heal when we sleep. So through the seasonal allergy, this phase which we're going through, make sure you're getting plenty of rest. That's when we do all the detoxing.
It's such good news because it's passive healing every night. Every night.
Every day. Yep.
Easy breezy. All right, Bart. How do I know if I should take a food sensitivity test?
All right. So food sensitivity testing. So many of you know I love testing, and I often try to avoid it. So I know it sounds wild. So let me explain. So food sensitivity test falls very much into this category of, I think we really have to know why and how to use a food sensitivity test. And they're a little pricey too. So here, I'm going to paint a couple different pictures here. I love them and I use them very frequently to help gather data, to help create a strategy for us to become superhuman. And data can help us do that. In the event someone comes to me and says, man, my gut is off, I'm doing awful, and man, maybe I need to run a food sensitivity test. I think I'm allergic to some foods. And then I'll ask him, well, how's your diet? And he said, well, I don't know, like it's not going. And then I'll get detailed with him. Do you still eat gluten? Do you still drink alcohol every night? Do you eat processed food? Do you go out? Do you pay attention to the canola oil that's coming in? Do you pay attention to any of the other chemicals that come into your body? If they're not dialing all that in, I usually don't recommend a food sensitivity test for two reasons. One, I don't want to be the one that wastes their money. Two, in the event we use the food sensitivities improperly, and here's how it could be used improperly. You get a food sensitivity test and it comes back and it says, you have a food sensitivity to this. And you go, oh, that's my problem. I have to avoid, I'm going to say coconut oil because I have a food sensitivity to it. If that's your thought process, wrong. And that's part of our job as healthcare practitioners. Flip side, I want you to think of it this way. The food sensitivity tests, when you do them, they should automatically ring a bell that if you are sensitive to one of the foods on God's garden, know that that food sensitivity is caused by leaky gut. In the event you have leaky gut and that most people have some version of leaky gut, you will see things on your sensitivity test, which should only then make you ask the next question of how do I heal my leaky gut? And I'll explain that real quickly. This is by the way, where this weekend, I start a 6-8 city tour of teaching other doctors, functional medicine doctors, about this very thing, about leaky gut and about adrenal dysfunction, all this fun stuff. And hopefully more and more practitioners are going to be able to help people and heal up their guts. Because you change your gut, you change your life. So the food sensitivity testing, if you do a food sensitivity test, recognize that you can get some great data back, because you might very well be very surprised by some of the foods you're eating every day are pro-inflammatory because of the state of your system. Case in point is me. When I ran my first food sensitivity test, and this was quite some time ago, one of my highest markers was to coconut oil. Now, who the heck is sensitive to coconut oil? Me. At least I was. I'm not anymore. So it blew my mind because I use coconut oil every day. I was putting it in my coffee, in my smoothie, cooking with it. I was using it 2-3 times a day, every single day. And that's when I had the aha moment. Oh, it's leaking out of my gut into areas it's not supposed to be. Now my body has developed an immune response to coconut oil.
Wow.
So if you get your food sensitivity test back and you're like, I don't get it. How can I be sensitive to broccoli, to chicken? And this is what I see every day. It tells us you have leaky gut. So that's where I love it, to make an eye opener. No, you should not have a food sensitivity test, a positive test to 3 or 4 of the foods that are from God's garden that you're eating on a daily basis. You should not, but I see it all the time.
So the solution to that, what I'm hearing from you, is not just to stop eating those foods, but to be proactive in healing your leaky gut.
100%. Yeah. And so that's really where that test has to lead us. Is it confirming the fact that we have to hunker down and create a strategy to heal the leaky gut? So I've run additional food sensitivity tests on myself after healing up my leaky gut. I don't have a food sensitivity anymore to coconut oil. Pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super cool. And if someone were to suspect or have confirmation that they have leaky gut, like many of us do, is that something you could help them with?
100%. And that's literally what I'm about to go on tour for. I say tour because that's what it feels like it's about to start. Literally 6-8 different cities that we're going to do this in. And yeah, and it's very methodical. Again, I think it's simple in the procedures. Is it easy? I don't know if it's super easy, but I'll also say this: you heal your gut, you'll change your life. There's no single one thing that you can do better than heal your gut. I'll also be the one that tells you can't heal your gut overnight. It's a process. It's a journey. It gets better and better and better and better. You make mistakes. It goes back a little bit, go forward a little bit, and you'll work on your gut for the most part. When I say work on your gut, you will keep a good, healthy lifestyle supporting a good, healthy gut, preferably the rest of your life. But gut health itself, to really change the dynamic of the way that your microbiome and your gut health, your gut-brain connection work, 6 months to a year. Doesn't mean you have to wait 6 months to notice a difference. A lot of people notice it in a very, very short time, 30 days, which is beautiful. But to really sustain those changes, 6 months to a year.
Got it. I know it's a worthwhile journey that you yourself have traveled, Bart.
Yeah, and to the food sensitivity test, I think everybody's a little bit different. So I don't necessarily recommend it for everybody. And a lot of people I do. If I know the individual in front of me is motivated by seeing the facts on paper, get the test. Yeah. It was a surprise for me when I got mine back to see that I had food sensitivities to, some of the foods that I was eating every day. Garlic. Yep. And I was eating it every single day, and to coconut oil. And both of those now I'm not sensitive to anymore. But it was an eye opener for me going, whoa. And I kind of knew it, but because they were good foods, I kind of ignored it. So this was a kind of a defining moment for me to run that test and say, all right, well, I got work to do.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to have some data to shift the mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Bart, should we do one more tonight for a short form,
Yeah.
a little Q&A?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's do one
So,
more and then we'll call it quits.
sounds good to me. So, Bart, what is the best protein powder to use? I know you get this question all of the time.
Yeah, I do get this question all the time, and partially probably because we have multiple sources of protein. So let me answer this the best way and the clearest way that I can say. Hands down, animal proteins give us a better profile of amino acids and more volume. So if I do a cup of animal proteins versus a cup of vegetable proteins, the cup of animal proteins has many more grams per cup. This is undeniable. So when people say, well, we can get our proteins from animal sources, from plant sources. True, you can. The amount you need to consume is not necessarily a normal amount. So if you're trying to get 25 grams using an animal source versus 25 grams of a plant source, I think it would really shock people to know how many plants you'd have to eat to get 25 grams of protein. All right. So that needs to be our baseline. Now we turn this into powders. Right. So let's just say we were just eating foods a moment ago. Now we turn this into powders. Probably the most popular long-standing proteins out there is something called whey protein. And whey protein comes from milk, which is an animal protein, and it has the perfect profile of all the essential amino acids. So you really are getting your single best bang for the buck by consuming whey protein. Now, that being said, not everybody can consume whey. They may have some dairy issues. They might not have the digestive enzymes to properly do it. And you might need to heal up your gut so you can. And that was my case. For years, I don't know if I just had too much whey protein and it would just blow me up every time I used it. Now I can use it perfectly fine. So, and I see this all the time clinically. Now let's go over to plant proteins. We use them. We use them in our cafe every day. We use them clinically every single day. We use them on the cleanse. And there are some that are better than others. Some of them, like pea, is a complete protein, but it'll take a lot of pea protein if you're trying to match things up to match up what you could do in an animal protein. And you do have to be mindful that there are things like pea. Pea is part of the lectin family, so it could be pro-inflammatory a little bit for some people. Now, the people that are vegetarians and vegans and they want to stick to it, pea typically is the best complete source. So if the question is really asking me, what's the best bang for your buck? Whey protein is probably the single best bang for the buck. Now, I can throw into this mix collagen and bone broths. And so they also could have a really good bang for the buck when it comes to getting, amino acids and proteins. Is it in the animal family? Yes, it's in the animal family. So not great for you. So bone broth still comes from bone, which is an animal, right? And same thing with collagen, still an animal. So I think that the animal proteins will get us the best bang for the buck. If you do want to use a plant protein, recognize that you're going to need a lot. So literally, you're going to spend more money for less grams of protein. But it's okay if you know that that's it. And I would say, just don't be fooled when people say you can get protein from plants. You can, but it is not equal. Plants are great for fiber and vitamins and minerals and nutrients, all those things, but protein is not the one to hang their hat on.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Bart, for excellent answers to our live Q&A tonight. Thank you all so much for submitting questions, for hanging out with us on Valentine's Day, and for joining us for another Health Made Simple show.
Yes, and I appreciate everyone coming here, and I appreciate the questions. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing this out. Keep spreading the love. And, of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.